I have to say, one of the things that I find so almost revealing and helpful in the attacks on you, Brie, and it kind of reminds me, Mark, of what you said about how they thought that you wouldn't be able to defend yourself against Dershowitz. But anyone who doubts either of your intellectual abilities is just so either dishonest or actually stupid. And to see the attacks on you recently, Brie, as you just don't know what you're talking about.
I'm DEI Barbie, babe.
All right, good. Okay,
I gotta make some t-shirts and monetize it at this point.
Yeah, you should make a doll. It should be a Brie doll too, and you can have a DEI t-shirt on or something. But the nerve of people to not know their own limitations, like the gall to hear them talk about you, Brie, and the same would be said of you, Mark. But to hear people try to talk about you as stupid, some kind of...
It happens every day. I started doing a thing, and I've stopped doing it because I didn't want it to become just an ego exercise. But like, do you know Brian Scalabrini? Brian Scalabrini is this NBA player, former NBA player. He's like, he's well known in the Boston Celtics. Yuck. And he was like maybe like the 10th or 11th, right? He was like the 10th or 11th best guy on the team, and people would always boo. He's a tall, red-haired white guy, right? So he's an easy guy to pick on in the NBA because he looks like he doesn't belong, except, he's like 7 feet tall and like a freakishly good athlete compared to the rest of the world, just not compared to the rest of the NBA. So after he retired, he started playing guys one-on-one. He would like play the guy who played Division II basketball. He'd play the guy who would scream, "You're a bum," from the cheap seats. And he would just beat the shit out of him for like 11-0, 7-0. They wouldn't even score. And he would say to them, this is harder than it looks. And he would say, "I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me," right? And there was this way that from the outside, you could scream from the cheap seats and make assumptions about him without really understanding all the layers, all the knowledge, all the study, all the work that goes into even getting into this, to even to being part of this conversation, even if one were to believe that I were on the wrong side of the issue. And so what I found was when I first got into the issue, the Zionist activists who were reactionary, who weren't scholars themselves, who weren't well read themselves, would assume that that in general pro-Palestinian people just don't know anything, right? But particularly people of color. The assumption is, right, that we are the Brian Scalabrinis of international politics, right? That we're there, but we don't belong, that we don't know enough, that we're not smart enough, and that the only thing we should be talking about is race and racism in America. And anything outside of that, and maybe, be surrogates for the Democratic Party, but still only to the extent that we're talking about, nothing fancy like the economy, just like
the Black
DEI-ish. Yeah, right, exactly. And so what happens is, so there's multiple things happening, right? One is just the assumption we don't know foreign policy. Then the assumption is, if we're involved in this conversation, our motivations must be different than we're suggesting they are, i.e. we are probably anti-Semites who are using this as a shield, right? Or as a cover to smuggle in this anti-Semitic discourse, that we just hate the Jews and Israel, and we don't have an issue with Israel, we have an issue with the Jews, right? And this becomes the argument. And which goes into a deeper argument about Black people, brown people, Muslims being anti-Semitic until proven otherwise. And so the idea that, and then of course, there's just the idea that Black people aren't smart, right? So calling, I watched one guy say all Briahna talks about is race. I wish DEI Barbie would shut up, or something like that. And it's like, you're invoking race. No one talked about race until you called her DEI Barbie, but they don't hear themselves, right? They literally don't hear themselves. And because it's an ideology so steeped in white supremacy and racism and all these other things, they are actually sort of shaping and coloring the discourse with that stuff and not even realizing it. And so I don't get it the way I used to, because I've done enough. I've debated enough people on this that, it's not an easy fight for them. But deep down, a lot of people still operate from the assumption that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm being manipulated and used by Palestinians or by JVP or by some other organization. That I'm basically a useful idiot for forces beyond my control.
I don't know how you keep getting people on your show, by the way. It's amazing watching Israeli spokesperson after Israeli spokesperson come on your show, Mark. Do they also underestimate you, or do they just want the exposure?
It's I would say, so there's two kinds of people. Some watch and they're just really, really arrogant. I mean, the male ego is a special thing, right? And then there's the Israeli. A lot of them don't. They see us as interchangeable, Black people and brown people. So that if they agree to come on Al Jazeera, it's for a particular thing. And when they see me, I watch them visibly relax because they haven't done their own homework. They're like, "Oh, it's a Black American. We'll be fine."
Yeah.
And then they relax and they actually say, and that's how they end up back painting themselves into a corner because they kind of overplay their hands because they're not taking me seriously.
Thank God, because it makes for such a great experience.
I cannot allow you to say 15 things that are unfactual and not be challenged on them. I'm happy to let you talk, but I'm going to ask clarifying questions.
You're going to tell me what's factual? Mark,
yes, I
spent 5 years of my life studying this, living it. When was the last time you were in Gaza, Mark? When was the last time you were in Gaza?
18 months ago.
That guy, David Friedman, the former ambassador who's accused you of Holocaust denial because you asked for evidence of something?
When was the last time you were in Gaza? When was the last time you were in Gaza?
A few years ago.
Okay, so you said Al-Shifa Hospital has been proven Hamas headquarters. What investigation has proven that? Who has proven that it's an Al-Shifa hospital since it's been a proven fact? Who proved it?
So now we're going to get into this basic like Holocaust denying idea that evidence that Israel has shown is not valid. I mean, is that what you're doing? Do you deny that people were raped?
Everybody that challenges you is not doing Holocaust denial. You said that it's a Hamas headquarter. I simply asked you for evidence of it. I said who, and you immediately equated it to Holocaust denial. Oh my, that was the one time where even my producer was like, Mark, you're much louder than the guest right now. Please calm down. The reason I was so angry, and this is the last thing I'll say, I had just talked to Hussam Zumlet right before from the PLO, and it was off air, but what he said to me, he would talk to me about a cousin of his who was looking out of the window and saw a dog in Gaza that was hungry, and they had no food or anything to give this dog, and the dog had started to pick under the rubble and gnaw on the arm of a child who was under the rubble, and we're like in tears, you know. And then I go from that, and frankly, to be completely transparent, he was partly telling me that because I had pushed him a little bit too hard, I think, about, you know, what about, but Palestinians don't like the PLO, Palestinians don't like the PA, these approval ratings are low. And he's like, why are you asking this question right now in the midst of a genocide? In retrospect, he was right. So going from that to Friedman, who was effectively saying all Palestinians are eligible and worthy of this kind of treatment, that nobody is innocent, that etc., and just frankly lying, I was just enraged and watching him lie and the arrogance, you know, and so little knowledge, you know, it was infuriating. I mean, my blood pressure was through the roof. I actually had to develop new techniques for interviewing these people because I was starting to leave the studio literally like shaking, like out of anger.
Right. Yeah. Zionist coping techniques.
I mean, I need to know what those tips are